Joe Biden arrived in the G20 summit in Vietnam to give a speech, and what we see is it may have been his most blunderous one yet. Gaffe after gaffe, endless screw up after endless screw up. I genuinely almost feel bad for him if he wasn't such a terrible piece of garbage like every single person that operates in the political class. Okay, the thing that's so fascinating to me about this, well, if Joe Biden's family really cared about him, loved him the way that they would claim that they do, considering he's a grandfather, a father, an uncle, you would think that they would stand up and say, no, I don't want you using my family member and propping him up like a puppet on marionette strings so you can push your narrative. But we don't see any of that. No one comes to the public because they won't dare challenge the establishment or they don't care about Joe Biden enough. And that should say enough about the people in power that they would allow this to happen to their loved ones and not speak up. This is a sundowning old man who's clearly being taken advantage of. This is wrong, and people should actually stand up and speak out about it. And what we see is the corporate press is finally doing so, which means that they finally come to the standard that it's okay to bash Joe Biden, which means that the establishment has come to the understanding that it's time to drop Joe Biden. Let's go ahead and see what we have. Let's go. Welcome to America, says Ashley St. Clair. Ashley St. Clair working for the Babylon Bee. She's quite funny. Do recommend following both of them on Twitter. She says, welcome to America. This is the President of the United States having his mic cut off mid-sentence by his own staff and being ushered off stage because he's so incoherent. I genuinely feel bad and think this man needs to be in a nursing home. Instead, he's in the Oval Office with the nuke codes. So Ashley's clearly in line with my line of thinking. This is an old person being taken advantage of. Why is it that the people that love them are not putting them in a place where they can be safest? Quite fascinating. But instead, as she says, he's in the Oval Office, the man who has control of the nuclear trigger. Let's see what Joe Biden has to do in his gaffe.
We talked about at the conference overall, we talked about stability. We talked about making sure that the third world, the Southern Hemisphere had access to change it, had access. It wasn't confrontational at all. He came up and
Thank you, everybody. This ends the press conference. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so it ends there, and Joe Biden just walks off. A reporter asks him while he's walking off, "Sir, do you have anything to say about your son being indicted?" Of course, he just goose steps his way off stage. I'll give him credit. He actually remembered to walk left off of stage this time rather than just doing that thing where he just looks like a Roomba just kind of going left and right. Okay, here's the deal. Like she said, this is the man in charge of the nuclear codes who's supposed to be the leader of the free world. And apparently, he doesn't even actually know what he's doing because he can't even be the person delivering his speech with control of what he has to say. He's being cut off by his aides. And what that means is what he's being told to say is being distributed to him from among high. If that's the case, who is that? Who is it that's telling the President of the United States what to say and do? That's quite fascinating to me. From RNC Research, Biden pulls out pre-selected reports he was instructed to call on as press conference in Vietnam edges forward. They gave me 5 people here, he says. What this means is Biden pulls out a cue card that sees the names of the reporters, probably with pictures of them as well, to show the people that he's safe to call upon so he won't be challenged. And of course, the first person that's on the list is Reuters.
I will take your questions. Let me see, they told me they gave me 5 people here. Nandita of Reuters.
Thank you for taking my question.
Okay, first off, he says, they gave me this list of 5 people that I can choose from here. This lady from Reuters, and she just pauses, and she's like, thank you for taking my question, Mr. President. It's like, he already knows the question. The question itself is already on the paper. Everyone knows this. Everyone's seen the pictures that have been leaked. And by everyone, I mean everyone that's a political animal that pays a bunch of attention to this stuff. There was pictures that were leaked of documents that Joe Biden carries around with him that are cue cards that have the pictures and the questions that the reporters are going to be asking him, and many of the times some of the answers he should be giving. That is the nature of scripted that this old, doddering, poor, decrepit old man needs. Joe Biden is being taken advantage of to the highest degree, and it genuinely must be stopped. Don't worry, I'm sure Kamala Harris will swing in to help him with that in the future. Let's go ahead and see From Alex on Twitter, the Indians look at John Wayne and points to the Union soldier and says, he's a lion dog faced pony soldier, where there's a lot of lion dog faced pony soldiers out there about global warming. It's a totally random clip. He's in the middle of a conversation. I don't have the entire G20 summit here because the footage isn't something that I was able to record. But there's so many different clips like this where Joe Biden's just talking about something totally different and he just randomly goes into some spiel about nothing that's even relevant to what he's talking about. And I'll give him this. This time, he was able to tie it back and bring it all back together by using a quote from a movie to say, they're all lion dog-faced pony soldiers about climate change. So, gotta give him kudos there. This is the first time I've been able to see Joe Biden actually backtrack to the initial point he was trying to make without just sitting there sputtering and then breaking, and you can see his cognitive faculties just shutting down, effectively almost watching the smoke come out of his ears. Let's go ahead and get to this clip.
So my brother loves having these famous lines from movies that he always quotes. You know, and one of them is there's a movie about John Wayne. He's an Indian scout, and they're trying to get I think it was Apache, one of the great tribes of America, back on the reservation. And he's standing with the Union, so they're all armed, they're on their horses in their saddles, and there's 3 or 4 Indians in headdresses, and the Union soldiers are basically saying, the Indians, come with me, we'll take care of the movie, everything will be good. And the Indian looks at John Wayne and points to the Union soldier and says, he's a lion dog-faced pony soldier. Well, there's a lot of lion dog-faced pony soldiers out there about global warming, but not anymore. All of a sudden, all realizing it's a problem.
Okay, Joe Biden just does this weird thing where he goes into like this whisper, this like old man thing. I've noticed a lot of old people do it, but they just kind of like start to whisper this point to try and emphasize that they're right. Joe Biden can cite any data or statistics to actually back up what he says to give any credibility or relevancy to his statements. But that doesn't really matter because he's an establishment figure and people will believe him because he's the man at the front of the room. Doesn't matter the fact that he's completely dementia riddled and has no capacity of even understanding where he is in the middle of a room with more than 5 people. Okay. Moving on, Ian Miles Chong, Joe Biden says the greatest danger to humanity is global warming. Can this man be more hyperbolic? I'm personally not the biggest fan of Ian Miles Chong, considering people are just listening to a Malaysian about what we should be doing with American politics, when a lot of times his rhetoric is somewhat firebrand and not in the way that someone like Javier Milei is. It's just divisive. He's not that great. I don't think he's realistically that intelligent, but who am I to say? I've never actually had a conversation with Ian. This could be just my misinterpretations of him over the internet, much like many people actually tend to do to their others. And this is realistically, I would argue, how so many people look at their political opposition. They just sit there, castigate them because they're wrong. They think they have a bad take and immediately just disavow everything they have to say. That's never going to be a way that we can move discourse forward so we can actually have proper conversations. All that will do is push us forward towards division. And realistically, as someone who's in favor of something like national divorce, I'm not even totally against division, but what I don't want is division driven by hatred of the other. I'm okay with division driven by the process of freedom of association, but if this leads to something like division driven by hatred of another, then what we have is a system that will not be sustainable. Let's go ahead and get to this clip.
Guess what? In addition to helping the environment overall, and the only existential threat humanity faces, even more frightening than a nuclear war, is global warming going above 1.5 degrees in the next 10 years. And we're in real trouble.
Man, you know what's a bigger threat to your children than a nuclear holocaust that destroys mankind's ability to live on planet Earth? You know what's worse than that? The global temperature rising by 1.5 degrees over the next 10 to 20 years. Oh my gosh, can you imagine? Unbelievable. This is why Joe Biden is not a serious person. And this is why the political class is not listened to by so many people. Because there's no reason to respect these people. Listen to that. Go back, replay what we just heard, and tell me that that is a serious person worth your time that you should be subjecting yourself to because they should rule you. No, that's not how this works. Back to Alex. Joe Biden starts to run out of batteries and announces that he's going to bed. This actually isn't even the first time he announced he was going to bed during these speeches, strangely enough, but let's go ahead and get to it.
Anyway, I just think that there are other things on leaders' minds, and they respond to what's needed at the time. And look, nobody likes having celebrated international meetings if you don't know what you want at the meeting, if you don't have a game plan. He may have a game plan. He just hasn't shared it with me. But I tell you what, I don't know about you, but I'm going to go to bed. Anyway.
I'll give him this. Another time, he actually did kind of save himself and catch him a little in the end. But he's still, you can tell, he's just like searching for the words. It's like Mitch McConnell death gripping the sides of the podium. He's just looking for them in real time, trying to grab them out of the air. And in the process of doing so, it just shows how completely lost he is. And again, this is just an old man being taken advantage of. You can see this with people like Dianne Feinstein. I have a video on the elderly people within the establishment and all of the nature of the fact that they must be ostracized from power because it's dangerous to have people like this in control. I will go ahead and link that in the description down below, as well as I will go ahead and link it above right now. If you want to click on it and put it in another tab, you can go ahead and watch it. Let's go ahead and get into this clip from Chuck Todd. This ties in with what I was saying initially. What we see is that the corporate press is now talking about how poor Joe Biden's polling is. They're talking about the nature of Kamala Harris now becoming the next president if Joe Biden can't make it because of his age. And what that means is the establishment is putting out feelers so that they can make this something that's understood in the public eye, so when it happens, it's not as jarring. Let's go ahead and get to what Citizen Free Press has. Joe Biden is the worst president ever, which that is not true at all. This is not true at all. This is like the people that go around saying Joe Biden is a secret communist or Joe Biden's a socialist. It's like, no, Joe Biden's not a socialist. He's a MasterCard man. He's someone who's sitting there doing all of the bidding and lobbying for the corporate class. Joe Biden is not a socialist. If anything, you could maybe tar him with the label of fascist with what he did with the OSHA ruling and the vaccine mandates, but that's not socialism and that's not communism. Let's go ahead and get into what we have here. Chuck Todd saying overall just 28% of Americans say Biden inspires confidence. That's down 24 points from 2 years ago.
For the Democrats, the issue, of course, is Biden's age. In a CNN poll this week, nearly 7 in 10 Democrats said the party should nominate, quote, a different candidate than Joe Biden. And it was the biggest concern among 49% of all Democrats. The biggest concern was Biden's age. Overall, just 28% of Americans say Biden inspires confidence. That's down 24 points from 2 years ago when he was just 4 months into his presidency.
28% approval rating, I believe being the lowest approval rating for any president in history. That's either the same approval rating that Jimmy Carter hit, or I believe it's a little lower. Nonetheless, we see that Joe Biden clearly failing consistently, being handled a blunderous fault from Trump's economic policies on how Trump wanted to handle COVID. And well, it clearly didn't get us anywhere that we needed to go. We see from Simone Atiba is breaking your reaction again. VP Kamala Harris says she's ready to take over from Joe Biden as commander-in-chief. Must watch. And this is exactly what I was talking about. The establishment is simply putting out feelers to see what people have to say about this stuff because they're trying to effectively let people know without telling them that Joe Biden will not be the candidate. And I don't believe they're going to allow Joe Biden to run because there's no way they can afford to prop this up and put someone this incompetent up against Donald Trump unless they're going to completely restructure and push entirely new voting habits just like they did in 2020, which I don't even think that they necessarily stole the election in 2020. I think that's a misnomer. I think they restructured the laws so that they could push their own metrics to go ahead and grab votes in large amounts in densely urban populated areas, and that is what led to them going ahead and sweeping it. But again, I could be wrong about that. I don't believe I am. If I see contrary evidence to the fact, I will go ahead and change my mind. I lost friends over the 2020 election, and I don't even believe that Donald Trump won it. That is what is so mind-blowing to me. The people that are adamant Biden supporters, my gosh, please don't bully me. Anyways, like I was saying, adamant Biden supporters, I lost a friend over this because they simply could not understand anything outside of the binary of like Donald Trump, don't like Donald Trump, vote for Donald Trump, hate Donald Trump. Because I didn't operate on that standard because I'm simply not a fan of democracy. You really actually have to stand for the metrics that I believe in. It's not simply a flag that you can wave that I'll go ahead and say, yeah, you know what, you got my vote, chief. But We move on and we go ahead and get to Simone Atiba breaking. Kamala Harris says she will step in for Joe Biden.
You're 58 now. If you win the second term, as you and the president are running to do, he would be 86 at the end of it. The Wall Street Journal had a poll showing 2/3 of Democrats say Joe Biden is too old to run again. Are you prepared to be commander-in-chief?
Yes, I am, if necessary. But Joe Biden is going to be fine. And let me tell you something. I work with Joe Biden every day. The work that under Joe Biden's leadership our administration has accomplished is transformative. I think the American people, most of all, want a leader who actually gets things done.
Okay. Yeah, sure, Joe Biden is getting things done. But is the things he's getting done the things the American people want? Do the American people want him to be sending tens of billions of dollars to Ukraine? Do the American people feel like they're doing better when they go to the gas station or to the grocery store and they look at how much it costs them for how much they've gathered in their basket, or look at that number ticking up exponentially higher as they realize their gas is only going up and they can't figure out why because they don't understand the process of economics nor inflation? Well, these people are not feeling the amenities of the Joe Biden administration. What they're feeling is the weight and pressure from his economic policies that is weighing down a large portion of the lower and middle class of America. And these are the people that do not hold assets. But the asset class, they're doing just fine because inflation expanded the value of their assets. I'm going to go ahead and leave it there. Joe Biden is falling apart. We have a decrepit old man who is nothing more than a senile mental elderly patient who should be sitting in an elderly home, who is the person who has access to the nuclear codes. It's realistic. No, it's not. It's ridiculous. Yes, it is. But that's what happens when you live in clown world. Hopefully, we'll see a turn in the future, but let's be honest, who knows how this is going to go. But with the nature of how people are seeming to consistently wake up and how people do not trust the establishment en masse, I'm quite white-pilled about what happens with the future because, let's be honest, if their propaganda was not necessary, they wouldn't be using it. Because if they were winning, the propaganda itself wouldn't be necessary in the first place. That's all I've got. Thank you for watching. Stay lovely, stay great. Tell me where I'm wrong in the comment section down below. Give it a thumbs up if you liked it, a thumbs down if you didn't. Stay great. Peace out.